The latest release from Film Masters, Film Masters, who I always point out, is dedicated to basically rescuing films that have been in the public domain and victim to really terrible transfers forever on video. Film Masters, dedicated to putting them out in beautiful new Blu-ray editions, is from 1960, Bert I. Gordon's Tormented. This is a film that I've seen many times over the years. It was featured on Mystery Science Theater. It was being a public domain film. If you don't know, public domain means it's a film whose copyright has lapsed or who is never properly registered for copyright. So anybody who wanted to could screen it without having to pay anybody. Anybody who wanted to could get their hands on any quality of a copy of it, could release their own copy on video. They could release their own film prints. They could do whatever they wanted with it, and did. And it usually results in quality of copies not being very good. Not a lot of companies over time, until Film Masters really, were willing to put time and money into doing an official release of a public domain film, knowing that in essence, anybody else could then take their new perfect transfer and release it as their own, unless they did anything to it to make it unique, to copyright it themselves. Criterion could put out Night of the Living Dead, which I guess there's some dispute as to whether it's really copywritten. I think Romero and Image 10 was always trying to say, yes, it is a film that is in copyright, and other people were saying it wasn't. But at any rate, we're not talking about that film. So a lot of people were very reluctant. A lot of companies were reluctant to put the money in when the film was already out there in a million ways for much, much less than they would have to charge, and somebody else might just rip off their transfer anyway. So bless Film Masters for going through and doing these releases, because these releases are the definitive versions of these movies, and they're great. Not to give anything away. So what is Tormented about? Tormented is about 74 minutes long. Those films in those days were much shorter because they were often part of double features, and they gave you a lot for your money in those days, and a long program, trailers, cartoons, newsreels, comedy shorts, all that other stuff in 2 movies and all that. But they also didn't want to make it an all-day affair necessarily. So the films were a bit shorter. So it's 74 minutes, it's black and white. This is an all-region Blu-ray from Film Masters, directed by Bert I. Gordon, who you may know from such films as Earth vs. the Spider, aka The Spider, or Amazing Colossal Man, The Cyclops, Attack of the Puppet People. They used to call him Mr. Big because his initials were B.I.G., and also most of his movies were about things that were either giant or tiny. This is one of the rare occasions where that's not the case. So story here is that a jazz pianist, portrayed by Richard Carlson, who you would know from a lot of sci-fi movies, including It Came from Outer Space, and probably he's best known for Creature from the Black Lagoon at this point. He is involved with this woman, Juli, and she's a breathy, blousy, saucy lady, and he's breaking it off with her. And she's confronting him at this lighthouse where he either lives or hangs out. I guess he hangs out there a lot at this lighthouse. And they have this lover's quarrel, and she falls to her death onto the rocks. And he is like, well, that's one less thing I have to deal with in life. He has just told her that he's engaged to marry some other affluent girl, and she's mad, and she's going to blackmail him. And whoops, she falls off onto the rocks below. And he's just like, things just took care of themselves. But unfortunately, she comes back from the dead in the form of a vengeful ghost who then makes him tormented. Really fun movie. It feels, it's very clean in terms of content, but also in its look. It's very clean, efficient looking. Sometimes movies of this era almost look like they were done for TV because they're just efficiently shot, and they're just very clean looking, not overtly artistic. There's some pretty cool artsy stuff in this. The lighthouse is not there. And if you have a keen eye for old style effects, you can look and you can see that the lighthouse is matted in wide shots, and that the door they enter is just like this little door that was set up near the beach, and the inside is all a set somewhere. But it's really well done. The ghost effects are fun, and they're shocking in the way they would have been in that era. And I can dial my brain back to what it would have been like watching this movie on TV as a kid, on late night TV, and it would be very effective as a fun, turn the lights out, enjoy a good old ghost story kind of movie. Presented in DTS HD Master Audio 2.0 mono and Dolby Digital 2.0 mono. So mono either way, which is fine because that's the way the film was originally mixed. And it means, if you remember the old horrible days of DTS or 5.1 mixes on DVDs, where if you were just using your TV speaker, you had to constantly be turning it up and down. Mono takes care of all that. So if I see mono, I never have an issue with that. I don't have a surround sound system. Presented with English SDH subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing, and subtitles on the commentary track, which is pretty cool. That's kind of unusual to see that. 185 widescreen looks great. Framing looks great. I think previously I'd always seen this presented 4:3 square full frame. So nice to know that theatrical matting looks good and it fills your TV screen without really compromising anything. A lot of times when you see these things looking square, open matte as they're called, or open aperture, it exposes things you're not supposed to see anyway. You're seeing the full photograph film frame that was always going to be matted off in the theaters. Sometimes they would compose them safely enough so that if it was shown on TV, they could show them that way and you wouldn't be, nothing would be a miss. But a lot of times you see the top of a set, or you'll see the light, or you'll see a boom mic and all that, and people equate that with bad filmmaking, and what it really is bad video presentation. So 185 looks great, looked great on the TV, really sharp, looks wonderful. Occasionally you might see a little gate float, but that's probably just due to the original materials that are now, what year is this movie again? 1960? Let me do the math. A long time ago. So fun film. I enjoyed it. Susan Gordon, the young daughter of Bert I. Gordon, who is like a child actress in her own right, is sort of the co-star of this movie, really. She's good, and it's just a fun, efficient ghost story. Richard Carlson is a total heel in this movie, and what you learn from the extras as what he was in real life, apparently. And it's just fun to see this guy get tormented. Extras. What are the extras? So the way that Film Masters has been doing it up to now is most of their releases have been double features. So there have been 2 discs with equally amazing transfers and presentations and deep dives into the extras for all these movies. This one didn't have that, which surprised me a little bit. But when you look into the total running time for this Blu-ray, you'll realize why maybe they didn't put a second movie on here. So bonus features. Here we go. Reading from my notes. Commentary by historian, writer, filmmaker Gary Rhodes, and a cameo by Larry Blameyer, the man who did Lost Skeleton of Cadavra and really loves this style of film. He comes in and toward the end to talk about Lighthouse movies. It's respectful. It's not mocking of the film at all. It might occasionally be amused by something that goes on, but it's not one of those that somebody's trying to just trash the movie the whole time. So I love that. I love where they just take the movie seriously for what it is. Somebody who really likes this movie, and it's a lot of info about the cast and the crew, the film's release, and as I said, Lighthouse movies. There's no gaps in this at all. There's no play-by-play. It's a really solid commentary. You get the full-length Mystery Science Theater episode, 92 minutes of Tormented, full-length, which is cool because Mystery Science Theater is wonderful. I love Mystery Science Theater, super funny, exposed a lot of people to movies they otherwise wouldn't. Downside of Mystery Science Theater is if you're like me and you actually like this kind of film, it encourages people to just automatically trash anything that's a genre film or old, or God help us, worst of all, attend public screenings and think they can do it themselves, which is just one of the most annoying film-goer traits. But I love Mystery Science Theater, and it's really cool that this is on here. So Bert I. Gordon, the amazing colossal filmmaker, interview with Bert I. Gordon, 8 minutes. Bigger Than Life, the Bert I. Gordon in the 1950s and 60s documentary. It's really good. That's 39 minutes long. The Spirit is Willing, visual essay by the Flying McKeast brothers. That's 20 minutes. Famous ghost stories. This is really cool. It's only 4 minutes, so this is just the intro and the outro. This was a pilot that Bert I. Gordon produced for an anthology horror ghost story TV series that would have been hosted by Vincent Price. So what you see here is, again, it's only 4 minutes. It's the very beginning and the very end of a pitch reel or a pitch film that was sent to potential sponsors. And the idea back then is that you need to find a sponsor to get your show on TV, and they would be the sponsor for your show, and they would basically essentially pay for the show to be on. So it opens with Vincent Price basically saying, here's what this show is going to be about. I hope you want to sponsor it and blah, blah, blah. And here we are, Famous Ghost Stories. You get the intro to the show where Vincent Price would have been the host as a ghost, essentially saying, oh, in this house, this happened. And then what this pilot episode was a cut down version of Tormented. So it would have been probably a 30-minute version of Tormented, condensed, and then Vincent Price comes on at the end saying, well, we hope you enjoyed that story, and if you join us next week, you'll hear a classic ghost story by the icon Edgar Allan Poe. So it's neat to see what this could have been. It would have been even cooler to see this in its full form, to see how it would have been condensed and what would have been left out, and how well a 70-something minute film would have worked as a 20-something minute story. Kind of in my mind after I watched this, I'm like, I wonder how they would have done that. I wonder how I would have done that. That would have been cool to see, but just the fact that this exists in any form and that we get to see it here is very cool. Then it's a little fuzzy, so it looks like it maybe came from a film to tape transfer that maybe made the rounds in video trade circles back when, but still, it's cool to see. I was in video trading circles back in the mid to late 90s, so I was in the old days of bootlegs and being a super film or TV fan. You were thrilled to be able to see these rumored things in any form. That's why releases like these Film Masters releases of these movies on Blu-ray that are remastered are so amazing, because we remember how crappy these things, especially if it was a public domain movie, how crappy these films used to look. And if you were in tape trading, how barely watchable some of this stuff was, but you were able to see it. You were able to see it in some form. So sometimes when things are a little less than perfect, I don't really trash them, unless it was the main feature looking terrible, knowing it could be better. If the extras are super rare and they don't look perfect, I'm just thrilled to see it and thrilled to have it. And I'm a huge Vincent Price fan, and I had no idea about this. So I'm cool. It's cool with me that it's just even that. You get the original 1960 35 millimeter trailer, the raw scan of the trailer, open matte, which looks fine, looks great. Some, age here and there, but that's fine. And then you have, which they often will do, the 2024 recut trailer in widescreen, where they basically just shot for shot, title for title, recreate the trailer. So if you have a keen eye for detail and technology, you'll see that the titles on the trailer are video generated. They're not the original opticals that were in the original trailer, but it looks great. And that's usually what they'll put on YouTube for people to see, to sell, because a trailer exists to sell a film, to get somebody to go see the film in the theater or to watch it on video or whatever. And really, if you are putting out a nice new remastered version of the film, you don't want to throw the old beat up trailer or an old trailer from a videotape out there on your YouTube channel to tell somebody what the film looks like. You want to show them what your new transfer looks like. So these 2024 recut trailers do that. And it's fun and interesting exercise to just compare the two for somebody weird like me. So let me show you what it looks like. I don't think there's much to really see with this one, but there is a replication of the original poster art, which I always appreciate, and the back with all the info and the list of what's on it. And then inside, so inside we get the poster art again on the disc and on the booklet cover. The booklet is really cool. The booklet is, I always do this. If you get out your digital measuring and see how thick that is. This is a 22-page booklet with photos and text, and it's written by, what is this? Written by Tom Weaver, something about the film by Tom Weaver. It's 2 articles, and about the film and the cast. And then what really got me, the boy and his film favorite, novelist, filmmaker John Woolley on Tormented star Susan Gordon. This was a guy who was a kid when Susan Gordon was a kid making movies, and he was smitten by her, a super fan. He created his own Susan Gordon fan club. He got to meet her, and it's photos of him meeting her and talking about interacting with a movie star his own age back in the late 50s, early 60s. So it's really cool. These booklets are always worthwhile. That a lot of these companies now that do these booklets, Film Masters being one of them, where the writing is exclusive to the booklet and it doesn't replicate material you've already seen in the extras on the disc. To me, that's always pointless. It's just like, well, I already heard that in the commentary. Why you put it in the book? It's separate stuff. So very cool, very good. Really great package for a fun movie. Bravo again. Tip of the hat to Film Masters once again for putting out on Blu-ray from 1960, Tormented.